between two trucks. The cameras kept rolling, but Jean-Claude Van Damme had stopped being an action star. Standing between two massive Volvo trucks on a Belgian highway at sunset, he was supposed to demonstrate perfect balance, perfect control, perfect strength. Instead, he crumbled. The split that made him famous was forgotten. The trucks continued moving, but Jean-Claude wasn't thinking about safety anymore. His legs trembled on the side mirrors as a single tear rolled down his weathered face. What happened in those 12 seconds changed everything anyone thought they knew about the man who'd spent 30 years playing invincible heroes. This is the story of the moment Jean-Claude Van Damme stopped pretending to be bulletproof. It was November 2013, and the highway outside Brussels stretched endlessly into the distance. The Volvo commercial shoot had been planned for months. State-of-the-art trucks, professional crews, insurance policies worth millions. Everything calculated to perfection, except for one thing. Nobody could have predicted what a single crew member would say that afternoon. Jean-Claude stood in his trailer, looking at himself in the mirror. At 53, his body still carried the discipline of decades spent perfecting his craft. Every muscle spoke of morning workouts, evening stretches, a lifetime dedicated to physical excellence. But his eyes told a different story. The past few years had been rough. Failed marriages, box office disappointments, the industry treating him like a relic from the 80s and 90s. He'd taken this Volvo job because he needed it, because it reminded him there was still something he could do that nobody else could. The epic split, his signature move, the thing that defined him. "Jean-Claude, we're ready for you," came the call from outside. He walked onto the highway where two massive trucks waited, 18 wheels each, chrome gleaming in the golden hour light. The crew bustled around with cameras, boom mics, safety equipment. Professional, focused, efficient. Director Tor Mirren approached with the usual energy of someone trying to capture magic on a schedule. "Okay, Jean-Claude, you know the concept. You're going to perform the split between these two trucks as they drive in reverse. We start close together, then they slowly separate while maintaining perfect sync. The whole thing demonstrates Volvo's precision steering." Jean-Claude nodded. He'd done impossible things before. This was just another stunt, another performance. "How far apart will they go?" he asked. "About 5 feet by the end. Nothing you can't handle." Jean-Claude looked at the trucks, looked at the highway, looked at the 30-person crew watching him with expectation. "Let's do this," he said. The first take went perfectly. Jean-Claude positioned himself between the trucks, placed his feet on the side mirrors, and, as the vehicles reversed down the highway in perfect synchronization, he slowly lowered into his famous split. The cameras captured every moment of controlled grace. "That's beautiful," Tor called out. "But let's get one more. This time, really feel the moment. Show us that this isn't just a stunt. This is poetry." Jean-Claude nodded and reset his position. The trucks moved back to their starting positions. The crew adjusted lighting for the sunset that was beginning to paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. As he prepared for the second take, Jean-Claude noticed one of the truck drivers talking quietly with a member of the sound crew. The sound guy was shaking his head sympathetically, patting the driver on the shoulder. "Rolling," Tor called. The trucks began their reverse journey again. Jean-Claude assumed his position, feet planted firmly on the mirrors. As they gained speed and began to separate, he eased into the split with the fluid grace that had defined his career. But during this take, something was different. Instead of focusing on the technical precision, Jean-Claude let himself feel the moment. The wind rushing past, the rumble of the diesel engines below, the absolute trust required to place your life in the hands of two truck drivers you'd never met. For the first time in years, he wasn't performing. He was just being present. The trucks continued their slow separation, and Jean-Claude's split deepened. This was more than a commercial. This was a metaphor for his entire life, stretched between past and future, holding on through sheer force of will and the refusal to give up. "Cut!" Tor yelled. "That was incredible. Jean-Claude, that was absolutely beautiful." The truck slowed to a stop, but Jean-Claude remained in position for a moment longer, feeling the burn in his legs, the satisfaction of perfect execution. He pulled himself up slowly and stepped down onto the highway. That's when it happened. As Jean-Claude walked toward the crew, accepting congratulations and preparing to discuss whether they needed another take, the truck driver approached him. Pierre Lefebvre, 58 years old, had been driving for Volvo for 23 years. Good safety record, reliable, professional. But today, Pierre looked shaken. "Mr. Van Damme," he said in accented English, "I want to thank you for that, for doing something so beautiful." Jean-Claude smiled. He was used to fans, used to compliments about his stunts. "Thank you, Pierre. You drove perfectly, made it look easy." Pierre's eyes filled with tears. "No, you don't understand. My wife, she passed away this morning." The words hit Jean-Claude like a physical blow. The crew around them continued their post-shoot activities, unaware of what was happening. "I almost didn't come to work today," Pierre continued, his voice cracking. "But we needed the money for the funeral, and I thought, what would Marie want me to do? She would want me to do my job well." Jean-Claude stood frozen, processing what he was hearing. "She loved your movies," Pierre said. "Every Saturday night we would watch one of your films together. She said you reminded her that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. That strength comes from the heart, not just the muscles." The highway around them seemed to grow quiet. The crew's conversations faded into the background. "She died this morning at 6 a.m., Pierre whispered. "Cancer." I held her hand. The last thing she said to me was, "Don't forget to be strong. Don't forget to be beautiful." And then I came here, and I watched you do something so strong and so beautiful between these two trucks. Pierre's voice broke completely. I felt like she was talking to me through you. Jean-Claude Van Damme had faced down movie villains, performed impossible stunts, and conquered his own demons more times than he could count. But standing on that Belgian highway, listening to Pierre's story, he encountered something that no amount of physical training could prepare him for: raw, unfiltered human grief. Without thinking, without calculating the effect on his image, or considering what the cameras might catch, Jean-Claude stepped forward and pulled Pierre into an embrace. Not the kind of quick, masculine hug that action stars give each other at premieres. A real embrace, the kind that acknowledges shared pain. "I'm so sorry," Jean-Claude whispered. "I'm so sorry for your loss." Pierre sobbed against his shoulder. "She would have been so proud to know I drove for you today. so proud. Around them, the crew gradually became aware of what was happening. Conversations stopped. People instinctively stepped back, creating a respectful circle of privacy around the two men. Jean-Claude held Pierre for a full minute, neither of them caring about anything except the shared understanding that life is fragile, that love matters more than any stunt, and that sometimes strength means allowing yourself to be vulnerable. When they finally separated, Jean-Claude kept his hands on Pierre's shoulders. "Tell me about Marie." "She was a teacher," Pierre said, wiping his eyes. "Elementary school. She taught for 37 years. Every kid who passed through her classroom, she treated like they were her own. She never had children of her own, but she mothered half the town. She sounds incredible. She was. She made me better than I thought I could be." Pierre looked up at the sky, where the sunset was painting everything in gold. "I don't know how to live without her." Jean-Claude was quiet for a moment. Then he said something that surprised everyone, including himself. "I've spent my whole career trying to be invincible. But you know what I've learned? The strongest thing any of us can do is admit when we're broken and still keep going. You're Marie. She knew that. She didn't tell you to be perfect. She told you to be strong and beautiful. That means being honest about the pain." Pierre nodded, tears still flowing, but with something like relief in his eyes. "You drove those trucks perfectly today," Jean-Claude continued. "While your heart was shattered, you did your job with precision and care. That's not just professional, that's heroic." What happened next surprised everyone on set, including the director, who had been quietly watching from a distance, unsure whether to intervene. Jean-Claude turned to the crew and made an announcement that no one saw coming. "We're going to do one more take," he said. "But this time, it's not for Volvo. It's for Marie." He looked directly at Pierre. "I want you to drive that truck one more time. Not for a commercial, for your wife. To show her that her husband is everything she believed him to be." Pierre's eyes widened. "But, Mr. Van Damme, The schedule doesn't matter," Jean-Claude said firmly. He turned to Tor, the director. 10 more minutes. I'll pay for the overtime myself if necessary. But we're doing this." Tor, who had been directing commercials for 15 years and thought he'd seen everything, simply nodded. Something about the moment told him this was bigger than any client's expectations. The trucks moved back into position. The cameras rolled again. But this time, the energy was completely different. This wasn't about precision steering or automotive technology. This was about honoring someone who would never see the results, but whose love had made it possible. Jean-Claude positioned himself between the trucks again, but before they started moving, he called out to Pierre, "This one's for Marie." The trucks began their reverse journey. Jean-Claude descended into his split, but this time every movement carried intention. Every second held meaning beyond mere technique. As his legs stretched between the moving vehicles, he wasn't performing the split. He was demonstrating that love can stretch across any distance, hold any weight, bridge any gap. The crew watched in absolute silence as the most famous action star in the world honored the memory of an elementary school teacher he'd never met, in a performance that would never be seen by audiences, but would be remembered forever by everyone present. When the truck stopped and Jean-Claude stepped down for the final time, something had changed. Not just for him, but for everyone who witnessed it. Pierre approached him with steady hands and clear eyes. "Thank you," he said simply. "Marie would have loved that." Jean-Claude smiled, and for the first time in years, it wasn't a performance. "No, thank you. You reminded me why I do this. It's not about being superhuman. It's about being human at the highest level." The official commercial aired a few weeks later and became one of the most viral advertisements in history. Millions of people watched Jean-Claude Van Damme perform his legendary split between two moving trucks, marveling at his precision